Hello, dear friends. I don't like to give bad news, but Russia has turned off the tap as expected. Opening piece. The first blackout. Russia turns off the gas tap to Europe. Hungary signs deal with Russia. New escalation in the energy crisis. Social protests expected in Europe. Fitch predicts eurozone recession. We are at a critical turning point. Italy's electricity bills are on fire. UK may ask IMF for a bailout. China devalues its currency to save itself from the crisis. Bank of America says we didn't learn the lesson of 2008. IAEA confirms attack on Zaporiya nuclear power plant. Let's start. The long-feared gas tap has finally been turned off, putting the European economy on the ropes, opening a new chapter in the supply crisis, which could lead to social protests, while Hungary will not have any problems after signing an agreement with Gazprom. Russia has already warned the European Union that it would cut off gas and oil supplies if it decided to limit their price. Russia turns off the gas tap to Europe, interrupting supplies indefinitely. The energy war between Russia and the European Union came to a head on Friday. Russian gas giant Gazprom has announced that it is completely shutting off gas supplies to the European Union via the Nord Stream pipeline. It is doing so indefinitely, arguing that it is doing so because of an oil leak in a turbine, which could only be repaired by a specialized company. The supply had already been interrupted since 31st August for alleged maintenance work, but was due to resume this Saturday. However, Germany remains defiant, calling for even more sanctions against Russia, while German citizens protest. G7 countries agreed to set price caps on Russian oil. In contrast, Hungary has no problems and celebrates an end to the energy crisis after signing a gas contract with Gazprom. Russia is ready to export up to 30 million tons of grain by the end of 2022 if it is allowed to do so. Protests. Fears of social unrest. The European Union has been surprised by Russia's decision to indefinitely shut down the Nord Stream natural gas pipeline, while Western analysts warn of social unrest and even civil unrest in European countries. Bloomberg notes that Russia's decision to halt natural gas supplies through Nord Stream 1 represents a major escalation of Europe's energy crisis. Diplomatic sources said that we are now entering the most critical turning point in the dispute with Russia, and this is because all countries are taking into account the risk of social unrest in Europe, because the patience of European citizens is running out, and there is a growing possibility that they will start to question the sanctions against Moscow. Germany and Norway, two of Europe's richest nations, are among the countries facing disruptions to daily life that in some countries could lead to civil unrest. In quotes, the world faces an unprecedented rise in civil unrest as governments in all countries grapple with the effects of the inflation on the price of basic foodstuffs and energy, said senior analyst Torbjörn Solbeth. Countries at extreme risk of protests include, unsurprisingly, Germany, Ukraine, the Netherlands, Switzerland, and Bosnia-Herzegovina. In Italy, electricity bills are on fire. Getting along with your neighbor and harnessing economic energy is beneficial for everyone, but the globalists have a different agenda. A recession. Fitch predicts a recession in the eurozone this year if Russian gas supplies cease. David Dabine writes that the European electricity future market is in chaos. Hyperinflation is affecting energy prices, and people are making life changes to survive the coming winter. Belgian Prime Minister expects harsh winters for Europe. German military train for hunger protests in Germany. German austerity rules come into force. Retail shops may no longer keep their doors open all day to reduce electricity consumption for air conditioning when it is hot outside and for heating on cold winter days. Public buildings, monuments, and advertising should be darkened at 10 o'clock in the evening. The energy crisis will force the UK to ask for an IMF bailout, according to the Telegraph. Sweden will allocate $2.8 billion to support citizens in the face of expensive electricity. The average price of electricity in the European Union reaches a new high. The European Union fills its gas storage facilities to 80% in the midst of the energy crisis. Reset news. World food prices fall for the first month in a row, despite everything. Saudi Arabia's economy is growing faster than that of China or India. On 11 September, the world economy is on the verge of collapse, according to lawyer Lin Wood. Currently, the value of gold-backed dollar was rising rapidly on Forex, while the New York Stock Exchange remains in free fall. Egon von Greyerz believes the stock market would fall by around 90%. A senior source believed that the financial restart could happen anytime between now and mid-October, unless a delay is caused until November. The quantum system began its integration with the global banking system at midnight on Wednesday, 31st August, so that countries could trade with each other. Bank of America says we learned nothing from the 2008 collapse. What do copper, gold and oil tell us about the recession? After the start of the summer, some commodity prices were beginning to show signs that experts interpreted a harbinger of a recession. By early July, the price of aluminium has plummeted by 30%, copper by 17%, and rebar by 18%, in a clear sign that demand was beginning to weaken. Copper is often used as an indicator of the health of the global economy, as it is used for many industrial processes. Demand for copper tends to be accompanied by an increase in economic growth and vice versa. Gold and oil behave differently, impacted by the conflict in Ukraine and the Fed's moves. Spain. Pollution on the southern coast of Spain after two ships collide off the Rock of Gibraltar. Unemployment rises by 40,428 in August and again exceeds 2.9 million, almost 3 million. Unemployment falls to 6.6% in the euro area in July, a record low on the country of Spain. The price of petrol rises again in Spain to match the return of the holidays. Americas. Mexico denounces at the United Nations the increase of weapons on its territory. New caravans with some 400 migrants departs from Mexico's southern border. Mexico is looking for investors to exploit its lithium reserves nationalized last April. Mexican companies, the most vulnerable to cyber attacks in Latin America. Of the 156 billion cyber attacks that took place in Latin America during the first half of the year, 80 billion were committed in Mexico, making it the most vulnerable country in the region. Argentina's Vaca Muerta energy reserve registers record activity. 8 policemen died after terrorist attack in Colombia. Petro will hand over nearly $5 billion in narco assets to Colombian peasants. Colombia and Nicaragua restarted relations after dispute over the San Andres archipelago. Demand medication and adequate food for imprisoned opponents in Nicaragua. Nicaragua participates in a military exercise in Russia. The Peruvian government will give subsidies to farmers in the context of the food crisis. Panama regulates the law on the medicinal and therapeutic use of cannabis. The Brazilian Amazon recorded the biggest fires in more than a decade in August. Biden extends the economic, commercial, and financial blockade against Cuba for another year. Protests grow in Puerto Rico over power cuts. Colorado residents find their air conditioning controlled by the electric company that locks the thermostats. Ukraine. International Atomic Energy Agency inspectors testified to attacks on the Zaporiya nuclear power plant and established a continued presence. The director of the International Atomic Energy Agency declares that the safety of the Zaporiya nuclear power station is not guaranteed. He claims that the physical integrity of the nuclear power plant has been violated. Ukraine finally admits to having attacked the town where the Zaporiya nuclear power plant is located. Experts, politicians, and diplomats have repeatedly stressed that the attacks on the plant could lead to a nuclear catastrophe. Ukraine is desperate for military aid from Germany, but German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has so far refused to supply Ukraine with tanks. China devalues its currency to save itself from crisis. China lets its currency fall to a 2-year low against the dollar. China is heading for a financial depression and its property bubble bursts. China tells the world that 9/11 was an inside job. The Indian Navy commissions its first indigenously built aircraft carrier. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.